After all this, you still...
I still want that ghastly yes, and you had better deliver.
This is Greenhouse Gaslighting, a free and independent podcast discussing society and culture with a left-wing, down-to-earth perspective. If you've ever wanted a deep dive on the issues, but felt like the bar for entry was too high, then you're in the right place. Let me get the backup bot in here, you feel me? You know?
A backup bot.
Yep, Craig's evil twin, Giark.
Giark?
Giark?
Giark!
Oh, man, my boy Giark. I could see that as an actual name somewhere. Like, I could see someone unironically naming their fucking kid Giark.
Listen, your name could be Adi for all I know, and there's some messed up names like that out there.
Yeah. You're right, man. Adi, such a crazy name. Or like Jonathan. Like, who would name their child Jonathan? That's
Joe,
crazy.
Nathan.
Joe and Nathan. Like, just pick a name. Pick a first
Pick
name.
one, man. Guy is awfully quiet there.
You didn't hear me?
No, we hear you now.
Okay.
No, I was just saying we're making fun of our names, and you're over there like,
My name
I
is
feel like-
wonderful.
I feel like if you're gonna make fun of a name, it's like the N-word. Like, you have to have the name to make fun of it, you know?
Yeah.
Well, that's a way to introduce today's film, Sinners.
Speaking of N-words,
Welcome back to the Greenhouse, dear listeners.
Speaking of N-words, sinners.
Yeah,
Oh God. No, I'm trying to think. The last time it was the three of us, I think it was for Nope, which was episode 52, I think.
That's
Dang.
true.
So let's get right into it. Welcome back to the Greenhouse, dear listeners. Today we got another movie magic segment covering the recent release Sinners from Ryan Coogler starring Michael B. Jordan. I have to say, you know, we will get into more mainstream and other societal and politics coverage in a bit, but we needed to get to this one because we needed to get something out, but also it's been very slim pickings for movies lately. Like 2023 kind of really ended with a bang with big films with like Oppenheimer, with Killers of the Flower Moon,
right? Yeah.
right, and even Napoleon. And then just 2024, like the best thing I could say that came out was Transformers 1.
Hell yeah.
No.
Transformers 1
Hollywood is
was
cooked, bro.
amazing.
Hollywood is cooked. And then I especially like just given how bleak, because that's the only way I can describe how these past couple months have been for everyone here, right? They have been exceptionally bleak. You can just see if you're one of the people who isn't rabidly celebrating what's going on right now, you can see the despair on people's faces, right? So I had kind of accepted that cinema would remain dead this year, and I was very pleasantly surprised when everyone in my life was saying you need to see Sinners now.
Very true. I like it just had like, yeah, no, you're entirely right. The last year of movies, I'm literally looking at a list of movies right now and I don't recognize a single one of these. Like it was so bad. Like Sinners is so refreshing and it's original, which I think is really cool.
Right.
You know, it's not like another what's they come out with another Final Destination like 12 or something. Like I don't know which one
Okay,
we're on now.
I will
I'm
say
still watching that.
it does look good, but we are on Mission Impossible 99.
Oh, I don't jump out of another plane, dude. Okay, I get
Tom
it. That's
Cruise,
awesome.
literally, his bones and cartilage can't take this anymore. Stop doing this to this man.
Which I didn't.
Scientology don't need that much money.
They don't. I don't know which Fast and Furious we're on. But I didn't watch the last one. But someone told me they actually like drove shot a car to the moon. Like, I don't even know if that's true. But like, because I didn't watch the last one, but maybe it is. Did you guys? I don't. Sinners was good.
I have not kept up with that because I think this is part of the extended issue at hand, right? Which is Hollywood has been playing it safe for too long. We can out how superhero movies play a role in that, but really it's more so I'd say post the 2008 recession the film industry has been looking for safe bets, and sequelization and building franchises for whatever reason has been the motive for that.
Yeah, I think also you gotta mention the writer's strike, right? Like I don't know when a
Yes,
lot of these
yes.
movies were I don't know when a lot of these movies were written, but I'm assuming they're written far ahead of time, right? So the writer's strike definitely impacted like the quality of a lot of movies. A lot of like really, really bad movies came out. So it's like I guess we're kind of recovering from that, maybe. Like I really do have hope for some of the movies coming out like later this year, but I hope Sinners is setting the tone because like Sinners was so good. The cinematography. Did you guys see it in IMAX or no?
We
Yeah,
did, and
saw
we have
that.
some shenanigans that happened at our viewing we'll get into.
Oh, crazy, crazy, crazy.
But that does touch course surrounding this film. That I'm not on Twitter anymore. It doesn't matter. Someone in your life on Twitter will tell you everything that's going on. There's this weird like double speak going on about the film. I'm like, is it doing well? Is it not? Almost like to lose in a sense. And I don't want to read into the culture war angle of how the film is being perceived. But what it is proving from just like a sheer box office perspective is original content can do well. And I think me and Sky were talking about this earlier, where it's like the way the rights ended up working out for the film, where that Ryan Coogler ended up getting to hold them, possibly because the studio system thought that that would be a way for them to save money in the long run. And it looks like this ended up being like another feather in his cap, in addition to just making this movie, right?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
He has the rights. I can't wait for the Sinners extended cinematic universe. You know.
And that's the thing is people have been talking about like, oh, are they gonna make a sequel? Are they gonna make a prequel? And it's like it can be a really good standalone film,
I
but the
think it's an
fact that
excellent standalone, yeah.
yeah, but the fact that Ryan Coogler has the rights and he can't be forced into making into a franchise is the best part of it. It's only if he wants to, not because
Exactly.
the studio is like, oh, we won't let you do anything else until we have 10 of these movies. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah, unpopular opinion though. I don't want a sequel or a prequel. I feel like I like the fact that I get to wonder about what the fuck happened in Chicago. I like the fact that I can wonder about like if other like zombies or werewolves or whatever can exist. Like I don't know. I feel like we don't have to turn Sinners into the MCU. You know, we don't have to turn it into another Captain America or something. You know, I feel like we should. I don't know. Maybe like encourage more original films, original writing.
One thing I will say, I would like a prequel. I think it would be cool. And just like start showing supernatural things happening in the world that they probably just like wrote off.
Ooh,
Um,
that's a good point.
but I want to see the natives. I want to see a native vampire slayer movie now. Like, they stole the show for me. Like, obviously, everybody was amazing, but like the idea of like leave leave that fella alone, but we ain't about to save you. I love that.
Yeah, I love the like when the Native Americans like show up and he glances at the clan hood. He like that's so it's such a good detail because like the dude literally goes, "Oh, I'm gonna ask you one more time and then I'm gonna leave because y'all don't actually deserve my help, but like I'll offer it." You know, he's a better man than I
I'm gonna
could be.
try. I'm gonna
Right,
try.
exactly. Better man than I could be.
Something to be said about that though is like, and I think it does serve the intent of art better if it does remain a standalone. Is and especially I'd been feeling this way based on the films we'd seen in 2023. Is that cinema could become this space grapple with the demons of the past to some extent, and especially with Killers of the Flower Moon, like going in that revisionist Western territory. That's something that I found to be breathtaking. One, because that's very fertile ground for filmmakers and storytellers to take, but also it does enable from a societal lens, I view, and again, there is an overstatement of how much you can use art to do this, I guess. This idea that we can try to grapple with our past demons. Initially in that year was more so with historical tales. In this lens, kind of using historical fiction as both a safe space as well as a very transgressive space to explore those ideas. And I think for what it's worth, the setup of it as a very standard fare horror film, if you think about it. There is a massacre that happens at a party. It's almost like Friday the 13th style setup, if you think about it, but translated to this very unique setting that centers characters who are traditionally not put in the main canon of how we tell stories in America, right? That's very powerful stuff, and I hope that even if there's not a sequel, there is a renewed interest in historical storytelling, whatever form it takes.
I agree. I think that it's also super interesting. You mentioned like the massacre that happened at the party. It's like this movie was kind of like a cool black movie, but then it was also like a really cool like classic-esque, because like when was the last time you saw a vampire movie where like they couldn't be invited? Like that's a trope, but like you don't see that very often, right?
Right.
And then like so it's like a classic vampire movie. It's like a period piece, and it's like a slasher, right? Because it's just a huge massacre all rolled into one. I really like that like genre bending. I really like that, and it was black people, and I think that's kind of awesome. So yeah, no, I fully agree. I think that historical fiction is a great way to kind of reckon with those demons. It's a great way to also teach people. Like I remember talking to a friend about it, and he was like, "Oh, but I thought in the 1930s or whatever, slavery was already illegal." I was like, "Yeah, but sharecropping, and it
Nobody
wasn't
knows
actually."
a damn thing about
Yeah,
sharecropping.
exactly. And it's like
Slavery isn't illegal now.
it's
So
just
it's
codified.
funny that it would be in 90 years ago, but sorry.
No, you're right. Like you're absolutely right, and it's cool because even with like fiction, you can still end up like asking those questions and learning things, right?
And especially in mainline cinema, you don't see like the Delta South displayed for what it is so starkly. I think the last time I'd ever seen something like that on film was unironically Mississippi Masala, which is more of like a 92 romance film, but it's set in the Delta South, so it kind of just takes it very literal. And I think for the film to kind of just no holds barred show like not just like the rough conditions of the South in those years, but even like there is a realistic cross section of the community. There's that's kind of grounded in reality as well as being fantastical all the same. It was very thoughtfully done, you know?
I'm sorry, I'm quickly Googling, double checking where Coogler is from, but isn't he from that area, right?
He's from California.
He's from the Bay, but he did have like this moment where he was talking about how he had never really been to the South. And I think for this movie, like he had went to the South and he had saw like the places where people were enslaved and sharecropping and all this other stuff. And he was like kind of talking about how it was funny that he went to Africa before like going to the American South. And like obviously he went to Africa for Black Panther and all of that stuff. And that's
Right.
but like you went and you studied this fantastical world and created this world where there were African influences, but your direct ancestors came from this area. In majority sense. And I think he has family or like he can trace his family from living into the South. But yeah, like the fact that a lot of us, especially who live out of the South, who their family great migrated like generations, one or two and a half generations before them, like we see the South and we hear things, but it's different from seeing a cotton field every day.
Yeah.
and knowing that your ancestors have went through hell, and going and seeing I mean, I don't know if they do that much sugar cane in America anymore, but like the sugarcane fields used to be the most horrible fields to work in because of like the sugar would seep onto your skin and like burn you and things like that. And how like we're just so disconnected, not by time, but just by space. And especially with taking away DEI, more people know less.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very like real reckoning of the past, and I think like you said, there is this um interest in historical fiction that juvenile. Like that's how I feel about things like Bridgerton, where it's like this kind of reimagining of the past. But then something grounded like this, especially as America has taken a more able, insane approach to how it deals with itself and its own mythology, is refreshing to us in the present. And I think again, it's just like, you know, a lot of families have that. Again, I can't speak to this directly. You know, people fled the South for a variety of reasons, and I think for a horror film to kind of take this really subversive idea, the South, and the kind of idea of what people ran from also being super, and kind of playing around with like these literal ghosts of the past, makes a fertile ground for horror storytelling as well.
I agree. I also love the touch of the hoodoo and voodoo that they had. Like
Exactly.
The like the first, obviously the first half of the movie was like it's just them setting up for the party. Oh, spoilers! I guess we should say that or something. So obviously the
Too
first
late. You
movie,
late.
yeah, no, my bad, guys. The first half of the movie is setting for the party, right? And then like the second that Smoke gets, not Smoke, I'm mixing up the twins. The second that he gets turned, the whole time, I'm also blanking all the names, but she's thinking it's a haint, right? And like
Yeah.
the only reason why I know what a haint is because like, you know, I had like my great grandma told me goofy stories. They're not goofy stories, but like, you know, they're just like scary stories and stuff like that. I remember her
Yeah,
mentioning.
superstition and the supernatural, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And then like I remember watching it with someone who did know what she was saying, and I was like, "Oh yeah, it's a haint. It's like a creepy little demon spirit thing." And they had no idea. Like it's a cool way to movies like this is a cool way to learn about culture. It's a cool way to explore like traumatic historic events. It's without it being too like, I don't know how to say this without sounding like horrible, but I love movies about the struggle and resistance and all that, but sometimes I don't want to watch just like persecution porn, you know? Like sometimes I do want to watch just
That's very real.
fantastical. Yeah, you know, sometimes I want it to be fantastical. I want it to be fun. And sometimes watching, you know, a movie again and again and again about how my ancestors were treated is not fun, even if it is necessary. Like I'm not saying movies like that aren't necessary, but like that's not why I want to see every movie, you know? So I do like how, you know, slavery and sharecropping and like straight up discrimination was shown here, because it was still integral, like it was still very, very important. But at the same time it wasn't just like persecution and horror and terrible, you know?
And we'll get into that, because I think like the whole time I was watching this, a lot of things were clicking for me at once. Like I had been reading Frantz Fanon's Wretched of the Earth. I'd been reading. I still got to work on this project, but you know, in trying to study about like the history of Detroit, like the Great Migration is central to that history, right? And
Yep.
just all these things were like fertile ground for my mind to go insane as the film went on. So we'll get into all this. So I guess let's start with, you know, Coogler's oeuvre, right? So he's particularly been best known for works like Creed and the Black Panther franchise. And people may have been like lowballing him for being boxed into that. First real highbrow project was Fruitvale Station, which was a very serious drama and retelling of a victim of police violence. So, from what his work so far, how do you think Sinner stacks up?
Oh man, I think Sinner stacks up really high. I think that personally, and this might be a little crazy, but I think I like Sinners more than Black Panther.
I think I
I
do
I would
too.
agree. I would agree.
I'm wrestling with that as we speak because that sounds insane to my head, but like I think I do.
Well, and
Yeah.
what it proves to me is like Ryan Coogler as a director had to stand behind his back. If something like Black Panther is heavily edited and controlled by the MCU and Disney, whatever conglomerate that is, having the space to kind of just pop out and show people quite literally that you can do it proves to the studio system that like it's not necessarily a problem with modern talent when it comes to actors or directors. Like they can make excellent films. They've actually been constrained by the studio system as of late.
Yeah, I forgot who I was watching, but I was watching someone review this movie, and they made a really good point. They were like, all of these movies with like absolute horrible storytelling, with absolute horrible writing, with absolute horrible like representation. Like we got to see like marginalized Irish people. We got to see Chinese people who were also very heavily marginalized in the South, usually working on like railroads and things like that. It's like there's no excuse. Is kind of what these movies are kind of showing us. Like the movies like Sinners, like it's just showing us that there's really no excuse. Like we've had bad movies for way too long, and we didn't have to have that.
I think this also shows like because I'm looking at Ryan Coogler's like filmography, and it's just he deserves to have a blank check so he can do whatever he wants to do. Like honestly, this shows so much because like it was written, produced, co-produced, and directed by him. Like imagine like one of your first original works just hitting it out of the ballpark like this. Most people don't even get their original works at all created, but the fact that it is original and it is amazing, it like in this time of having so much unoriginal, so much remakes, so
Yeah.
much like Marvel or the Marvelification of everything. Everything has to be that type of. Okay,
I do want
I'm
to say
so
one thing about the Marvelification.
Marvel.
Like, I
Yeah,
like that. I think that because like I think that this was the first movie he's done with 2 post-credit scenes, and I'm not gonna lie, Black Panther is the reason why that is, right? Like
yes,
he worked at Disney, and then he was like, oh okay, y'all were kind of doing something with these post-credit scenes, and he added 2 of them. So like I do like the fact that he can take. Like even when he is thrown into like a a tightly controlled like corporate studio like environment, he can still learn lessons and then still reincorporate them into other films and still have it be good, which is awesome.
right. And this is where we go into why our screening, even though it was IMAX, it was ghetto as fuck. So it started like the preview started 15 minutes after the movie was supposed to start. So we were just
Um,
sitting there like a black theater
yeah, that theater did us dirty.
Wait,
for
They didn't. So they had nothing on the screens for 15 minutes.
nothing for 15 minutes. We were just
I
sitting
was
there
running
like
late. I had to drive separate, so I was just like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna miss it." And it turns out I got in when the ads just started.
they,
literally
they
So
then
we
bought you
watched
just
like
too.
40 minutes of ads just to get to this.
yes, and then we were like, there's no way they're gonna show us all of the previews because like they're late. They showed us every single one of those previews. Every single time another preview played, we were like, are you serious? There's another preview? And then it started, the movie was good. We watched the first like end of credit scene. And then like I think right before the next one was about to come on,
They just
they
shut it
turned off
off.
the screen.
No way.
Yeah.
So we have not seen the second one. And luckily we were with people who knew that there was gonna be a second one. So they were like, oh no, like don't worry. It's gonna come. And then they're like, goodbye, folks.
That's
Yeah, might have to get this one on Blu-ray.
that is criminal. That is criminal.
And
Very
I mean
ghetto.
that
So many
speaks
Black people disappointed.
that speaks also to like I don't want to be like they trying to shut this film down because like it's that organized. But it's like you tie it to like this weird discourse and like weird like it's not doing as good as they say kind of discourse. Some TV host was like, people are watching this movie in the morning. Don't y'all have jobs? And first of all, no.
Yeah, it was Sherry Shepherd.
Unemployment's high. We in a recession. People won't be at the theater.
It's like,
That's
bro,
crazy.
have you never heard of a Tuesday? First of all, matinee.
Right, it's cheaper,
Matinee.
man.
It's literally cheaper. Some people can only afford to go to the movies if they go to a matinee. Second of all, Tuesdays at majority of theaters have discounted tickets
Popcorn too.
and popcorn. So like, please be for real. Also, a lot of people have jobs that start later, so maybe they're able to or have days off. It's like what is really happening that's so serious at work? Like, I am not a doctor. They do not need me that much. I can go see a quick little movie.
It is weird that like I saw somewhere that the people were saying that, like the movies that were as successful as this one got way more praise than this specific movie, and like I'm not immediately trying to just jump into the culture war shit, but like I do think there's some shenanigans at play.
Oh, I am ready to get into the culture war and call out people by name. Variety. Variety has been horrible ever since Sinners got dropped. And literally one of their like first posts about Sinners when it first came out was like, Sinners amazes at the box office. And they are very much the same. They do that every single time there is a Black box office. Like they did that about Bad Boys.
Wow.
Bad Boys didn't amaze at the box
Yeah.
office. People go to see Bad Boys because everyone loves those type of movies. Action, adventure, Bew, like it's Will fucking Smith. That doesn't amaze in the theaters, bro. Like it's obvious that a blockbuster is going to do well, especially if it got Will Smith in it. So like for every single time it's a Black feature, it's got Black people, it's created by a Black person. It's just so amazing that it did that well. Oh my God, it amazes.
And that's the thing. No criticism is happening on the merits of the film. Like I think like people, there's even a perspective where they could be like, hey, I don't like that this serious stuff is being used as the window dressing for a horror film. That's a more legitimate criticism than what I've been hearing.
It's never that.
Yeah, you're right.
Exactly.
Or it can be like it amazes for a original work, because usually we do not appreciate original work. If you're talking about it like that, like, oh my God, this is proof that more original work should be created because it is amazing. All other things that are like remakes, redos, all of this other stuff, sequels, prequels, and this is an original piece. Wow, that is amazing. Other than that, you're being fucking racist.
Also,
Right.
Sorry to tell ya.
to that end though, right? Because like there is something to be said about like continuity of collaborators versus sequels, right? I don't know if you guys I had to step away for a sec, but did you guys get a chance to talk about bringing back Michael B. Jordan and Ludwig Göransson for this film?
Well,
We
those are his boyfriends. He's got the thing. Okay, I will say I like to say this about any type of men friendships. So if you have a problem with that, don't. But anytime men collaborate often, it's very much giving boyfriend. It's very much giving we go together now, and not just I'm so happy. Like, because we know how men be acting.
You're
Y'all
right.
don't even want to give it to you when there's literally okay. A little pause. There is a meme going around of this man being like, "Hey, guy friends, this black man, I want to go see Sinners with you," and then the other black dude being like, "Oh, this is gay. You want to go see a movie with a bunch of niggas?" And it's like, those are your friends.
Like,
That's what you do. This
come on
is
now.
friendship.
We all know there's nothing gayer than spending time with friends. Like, we know this.
Like,
I mean,
so
that's really it. Because as society gets more alienated, they just do these like hope things. Like the right is just the philosophical integrity of the right is just cope. That's all it is at this point, right?
it really is.
But like to that end, right, is like if you have these people that collaborate on projects frequently, that's what gives those projects their unique voice. Like how else do you say that like, Scorsese has a unique style that people get excited by? It's because he works with the same actors and like the same teams a lot of the times, right? So when they come on for a project, it has that quality. You know what I'm saying? Like to have Ludwig Göransson as the music director, one is great because he's done a great job with other films too. And he does the research for like the topics, right? So like Black Panther had a very well done soundtrack for what it's worth, right? Even if it is a Marvel project, a lot of effort was put into producing the soundtrack, researching the soundtrack, going to Africa to learn the instruments and that kind of stuff. So it had a very well engineered soundtrack as a film. And then for this film especially, and this was like what spoke to me hardest about the film, as a non-black person addicted to blues type shit, It's a very common genre of dude at this point, unfortunately. Seeing Delta blues brought like center stage and like having Preacher Boy like do a bunch of original songs for the film, play them. Did they record them live for the film? I don't know, but like centering the blues as a supernatural element within the film and using music as like this central bridge to the film itself. It's part of the plot, it's part of the design, it's part of the lore and magic system, all this stuff, right? It does two things successfully for the film, which is one, it centers its unique black voice and perspective, but also it takes us back to that particular moment in time by focusing on it as a genre, I think.
I also really do like the fact that because you mentioned the magic, blues being a part of the magic. I really do like that because like watching back, it feels like I feel like a lot of times we talk about like African magic systems. They had their own beliefs and everything, and I think that making blues, which was created by black people, as something that is also supernatural, it feels like not necessarily passing the torch on, but it feels like the magic was with us and it still is. It's that I like that feeling of like we're also magical too.
Right, and it's like if you take the blues as a genre, I just took on some few notes. Delta blues, the specific genre in the film, and then even having it centered around a juke joint, focusing on the incorporation of traditional folk music and having it, this is a genre that's heavily influenced by the musical traditions of descendants of slavery. And if you contrast that against like the Scotch-Irish origins of country music, which is what the vampires were playing to, funny story, as the centerpiece of this film, blues is also a form of release of trauma and a recollection of history, right? And the film, I mean, you literally have his preacher father saying like, do not play the blues there. Like you invite like weird things into your life. Is the blues supernatural? And when you consider, an occult, someone with an interest in the occult like Annie, right? Who's touching on hoodoo and voodoo in the film. Or even like blues artists like Muddy Waters himself making obvious references to practicing hoodoo in his music. So like, this is a lyric from Hoochie Coochie Man, one of the greatest tracks of all time. I got a black cat bone, I got a mojo too, I got the John the Conqueror root, I'm gonna mess with you. It just the whole verse is him saying I'm practicing hoodoo while I'm at it.
I'm finna mess
And
with you.
even
Crazy.
yeah, and
Like that
and
doesn't
then
sound
also
like
like
he's cursing somebody.
Watch
Like,
out.
and then there is that like famous urban legend of Robert John who sold his soul to the devil at the crossroads to become one of the greatest jazz guitarists, right? So it's like fertile ground for the film to set itself in. And also, did you guys get into watching it in IMAX over a standard release or not?
I think we were about to, but Sky was talking about your guys's movie theater experience, which was not great, unfortunately.
I mean, okay, like the composition, pacing, casting, the aesthetic choices, brilliant. I don't think there was a single weak performance. I don't think there were really shots that were wasted. I know people complained about some of the flashback scenes. I thought they worked.
What
but
do
some
you
things
have to complain about?
Yeah, what was
I don't understand. But like one thing that I also found out is to actually create the practical effect. I mean, the near practical effect of having Michael B. Jordan play twins kind of involved developing new technology to do it.
Really, I just assumed that he just like took 2 shots and then.
But that was way harder. That was way than it looked to do. So sometimes he'd be talking to a body double and sometimes to no one at all while shooting these scenes. And it was also a challenge for the rest of the actors because they had to come up with the best techniques to achieve the desired results. So they also had to work in new technologies like halo cameras, facial recognition, a multi-camera rig. So it's just like from a technical perspective too, the film is an achievement.
Yeah, I know that I specifically went to go see it at an IMAX because I was shown a TikTok or an Instagram something. I don't know these social medias.
The short form addictive content that is the new MK Ultra, correct?
Yeah, pretty much. So I was showed one of those, and it was Ryan Coogler talking about the aspect ratios and how he used 2 separate cameras, which is why the aspect ratios changed in the IMAX versions. And I have to like, that's one of those details where like I hear it and I go, "Oh, that's cool," and then I just stop caring because I'm not smart enough to like catch the actual impact, right? Like he used super cool special camera, cool. But like when I was actually at the theater, it's like the scene that really caught me was when he was like massacring the clan, and like it went from black bars on the top, and then like as it panned to him, the black bars shrunk away, and I was like, oh shit, it's getting real. Like
it's about to go down. Like the most emotionally intense and the most scary scenes were in that 4:3 IMAX ratio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, like that's I don't know. That's just one of those technological things. That's just like it actually had an impact, which I think is really awesome because I feel like normally like the facts like that. Well, I mean, of course they have an impact, but I'm too dumb to really see that impact. I saw this one.
So
I think that's another thing I like about Ryan Coogler is he makes you care about film. It's like not only when he actually films, but when he talks about filming. And I think it's partially as someone who works in higher ed, I think it's a scam to get people to want to go to school. Um, because then you're like, oh my gosh, I should learn all these technical things and stuff. And not everyone needs to just go to school to learn it, but he is like one of these success stories of like he had $200,000 in debt from film school and look at his success now. And that talks about how important it is to study your craft and to know those differences. And I don't want to do just go to school, but there are a lot of different schoolings like now especially where you don't have to just go to a 4-year college. Like in Metro Detroit they have something that's like that I see at like college fairs, which is really cool because it gives students who are interested in that to get really like behind the camera and learn all of these techniques without getting that formal education. But how do you convince somebody who just hears $200,000, that's more money I've ever thought about, in debt, and maybe somebody will take a chance on me and I can be Ryan Coogler.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like it is a success story on Coogler's part, and that's awesome. But it's like that cannot be the norm, right?
Not at all.
And I think it also speaks to, again, like just how aggressively he took this opportunity by the horns and like was able to do so much with this movie. I think with all this, I think we're ready to maybe get into a discussion about the themes. We're gonna be here all night if we try to do a plot summary. Um, so I guess like one thing that the film does thrive on is this very, surprisingly stark depiction of the Delta South racial hierarchy and its world building that's juxtaposed against a magical realism that's necessary for it as a horror film. Was the film effective or limited in its cast of former and present black sharecroppers, Asian grocers, white vampire hunters?
That's a great question. I don't know. I think the casting was great. I think that I think that there was enough representation. I think that a lot of people could watch this and cheer someone on, you know?
Yeah.
I think that was really well done. Of course, like part of me is like, okay, yeah, but like when there were Chinese, but they were mostly working on railroads, should we have seen that? But it's like, it's okay. Like I think it's ultimately the way that the representation and the way that, how everyone kind of fed into everything was perfect. I also really do like the fact that it was like roughly it was accurate, right? Like the Irish were absolutely, treated horribly. And I think that was like a big thing, right? Like he mentioned that when he was giving Preacher Boy the quote unquote baptism, right? He mentioned
Yeah.
his he walks up to the barn with the party in it, and he's like, "Oh no, we don't do racism around here." It's it's really cool to see that kind of quote unquote solidarity, and I am saying quote unquote because I see that in this bullet there's a theme section for vampirism, and I have opinions on that. So I'm gonna say quote unquote solidarity because I don't think it was actual solidarity.
We will. Side, what do you want to?
Yeah. I was just gonna say one of the things that I did learn, and being on Twitter, it's very hard for spoilers, and I tried to stay away from a lot of them, but I did not stay away from all of them. So I was seeing little history facts, including that there were a lot of Chinese Americans who worked in the South, and they worked as the grocers, and they were able to be the like grocers of black and white people as long as they were segregated. So having that ability to go in between, like us seeing that, I saw a clip like actually talk about like it's an older Chinese woman, or a Chinese American woman. She has this thick Southern accent, and she's talking about how her parents were grocers in the South and how they ran two separate stores, even sometimes on the same street, one for black customers and one for white customers.
Was that their setup? I actually did not know
That
about
was the setup. Awesome. Yeah, it's worked into how the shop was seen. Yeah.
Oh, dude, that's sick. Never mind. I take back everything I said. The movie's perfect.
But like also, it would have been like I do understand. Like, so my idea, I'm thinking like, so where do the Chinese people go? Like, where do all of the people of Chinese descent? Do they go to the black one? Do they go to a separate one altogether? Like where do the native people go? Like, these are the things that I started to think about. That is also like that never made like. Obviously, I think about it, and then when you think of like Jim Crow as it comes closer to our historical standpoint, it's like they just colored all together. But to have a Chinese grocer means that you are okay with them being around. Like, it's just, it's there's so much of our history that we don't know because they don't want us to know, and having those little things that are teaching people shows this is exactly what they don't want when they say they don't want DEI. Like,
Yeah.
obviously,
don't
they're
want to
also saying they don't want Black people, they don't want people of color in general, but like they don't want us to think about this history and about what all of these things meant. They just want us to be like, slavery bad, we don't do it anymore. Yay, everything's okay. Like, nobody wants to talk about any of this. Like, nobody wants to talk about Reconstruction. No one wants to talk about the failures of Reconstruction. No one really wants to talk about 40 Acres and a Mule. They just want to, like,
yeah.
say it when Kendrick says it or when Spike Lee sometimes says it. But nobody wants to talk about how it was a lie in general. Like, they truly were never going to give us 40 Acres and a Mule. They weren't going to give us like the clothes off our backs. And that is a part of the history that is all covered up. Because if you start to talk about 40 Acres and a Mule and how no one got that, then you have to start talking about how no one was ever going to get that. And then you have to start talking about how slave owners got reparations and not people who were enslaved.
Yeah. And more importantly, as a centerpiece of this film, that sharecropping just filled in the gap that slavery left.
Exactly. Like,
nobody
and that's wants something... to talk. It's a building blocks. Like, it's like, obviously you're not going to teach a kindergartner calculus, but they don't want you to start teaching them how to add so they can learn calculus in the future.
To that end as well, right? Like, you're right that the right-wing what the film is kind of laying out is that there's just a psychotic reality at the heart of American life, and it is this abstract, unclear, but very unjust racial hierarchy. To that end as well, like, the characters being very openly cynical about it as part of the film's like emotional storytelling is just very intelligently done. It's just one of the smartest things this film does. To that end, I'm really just going to turn into now like 11th grade English teacher with literary trope discussions. Forgive me for this. How familiar are we with the literary trope of the tragic mulatto?
I mean, we're Black.
Yeah.
I'm clowning the audience. I'm clowning the audience here.
That is something else I will talk about. Like, Haley Steinfeld was a good actress, but my girl is like I
feel like this was to cock Shamik more, to be honest.
This was to just be like, hey, Shamik Moore, anybody can get with her fictionally more than you can get with her in real life. Like, literally. She does not want you, and it's not because you a nigga, it's because you're weird. But and like have this fetish for like her being a white girl, and then like looking into her history, she's not fully white. She's mostly white, and she's basically white. But I would have rather had a artist that is Black who is white passing, or like in that exact like 1/4 Black that is white passing play the role. But I like, maybe she was the best person for the role. Maybe it wasn't DEI. Maybe. Sorry.
I don't know how to ask. I don't know how to ask this without sounding insane. But like, what is like?
Baby, what's your background?
Yeah, like breaking the calipers, just going into 18th century phrenology with it.
Yeah, it's like her skull looks like that. Is she just white or? No, but like I was wondering, like, is she just white, or I don't know her. I don't know anything about celebrities. Please don't call me dumb.
No,
There's
you're
some
fine.
Philippine X in the mix.
Yeah, I think
Philippine X is crazy.
her mom's dad was half Filipino, half black. So that would make her mostly white still.
Yeah.
Because like her dad is Jewish and like all this other stuff. So she's mostly white, but she do got a little something in her. But I, you know, it would have been interesting to see like a Halsey in there. Halsey, is that her?
I'll
You
see.
say her
Yeah,
name? Yeah,
I'll see. I don't know.
yeah, because but I think I'm not sure I don't know the percentage of her dad, but I know her dad is black and her mom's white and she is white passing as hell. So like, it would have been
And that's
interesting
the
to
race
see
map her
someone
character
like
was dealing
her.
with in the movie as well.
Yeah, so it would have been something interesting. It would have been interesting to see this that has happened to someone who has a little bit more connection with blackness, but she did well. Like that's the thing. I don't know who else was in the running. I don't know if they would have did as well. She did. She played the part. She was family.
Well, and to that end, right? Like as far as the literal trope goes, is that this style of character has always been relegated to kind of be this misunderstood, lonely character who has to like deal with not being accepted in either a black or white world. But I think what the film does, to its credit, is it kind of flips it on its head, works it back into the horror genre, and she's the first party goer to be turned into a vampire.
Which pissed me the fuck off. And
But
like,
also, like it plays
I
to
was
those
like, this is
dynamics because she's
white.
the first one to go appease. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, like she's like, oh, let me do it. I can talk to them. And it's just like, it pissed me off, especially knowing the ending. Cause I was just like, you should have just you shouldn't even have been there.
Yeah.
You really should have went home to your white husband. And the fact that your white husband was like, where the hell is my wife?
to be fair, a lot of husbands should have had their wives home that night, as seen with the girl
Right.
Preacher Bowl stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know her husband was like, where is my wife when he woke up? Because she was a whole married woman.
I mean, the
And
movie
her
is called
husband
Sinners.
was not there. Like, you just
There
wake
was
up
a
and your
lot of sin.
wife.
There was a lot of sin.
There was a whole lot of sin
There
going
was
on.
so much sin.
Which probably
Just
goes into
sinning.
like this goes into like the next immediate question, right? So I think like, what's the treatment of gender and sexuality in this film? Is it grounded, or is it a modern imposition of our own perspectives? Because one thing that can be said, the movie's very hot. It's very hot.
I do think that in terms of gender, I think they did a good job showing like masculinity in a way, but like not like the typical like white dude masculinity. You know, it was like this like I'm sure like, you know, me and Adi, we're both dudes. We've been in conversations where we're super young and some old dude is telling us something gross that we don't realize is gross, right? Like that's how Sammy learned how to eat someone out, right? It's like,
well, that was at least
real.
done with considerably more respect.
Yeah,
which is
like,
very
that
true.
is like literally the nicest way elder can tell you about oral sex. Like
Exactly.
like that is that had the most like realistic understanding. It wasn't rapey. It wasn't all this other shit. Like that's how you know it's fiction.
Well, there was still like there was a degree of like 19th century watch a tone woman type of sexism, but like nothing past that. Nothing past that. The other thing that did get me with that too is it's a very different type of masculinity in the sense that like they didn't hurt these women because they were selfish. It was because they literally were in pain over their circumstances type of deal, which I think was like redemptive in a certain capacity. I don't know how that plays out though.
So who specifically do you mean they hurt the women because?
I'm talking about Smoke and Stack specifically. They both had to leave their women behind to go pursue their life of crime.
Very true.
Which unrelated, the idea of them pitting the Chicago Italian and Irish mobs against each other, phenomenal stuff. Phenomenal stuff.
Honestly, literally the whole that, and that's why I'm like, I could watch a 1920 Chicago
Like Boardwalk
period
Empire
piece
meets Sinners type shit.
yeah, like in the Chicago outfit with two black twins. Like would you not eat that shit up? Like I would. Like TV show.
Can you imagine if James Gandolfini was still alive and we could cast him as fucking
God,
out?
That would be crazy.
so amazing. like that's the thing is like the Ryan Coogler did so well creating these characters that even though it is such a great and perfect movie, you're like, yeah, I would eat that up. I might read some fan fiction again.
Well, on the subject of fan fiction, though, like it was very like it was sexy without like having to investigate the worst excesses of sexism at the time, but it was grounded, and at the same time, like the female characters are both empowered, not just outside of their sexuality, but even within their sexuality, they can take the initiative in that. And of course, the intersection of sex and horror is kind of it's sometimes seen as avant-garde, or it's like, it can be seen as too squeamish, but I think it was done effectively in this film because the metaphor of vampirism for sexuality, right, as a literary trope also plays into this. So I think definitely like both Annie and I forget what Hallie Stanfield's character was, Perline, all of these like characters kind of entering these very steamy Southern romances was central to the film's first setup as a party, and then into this broader idea of it as a vampire horror film, with the imposition of a Christian understanding of sin behind it. It works powerfully in its favor, I think. I feel like I'm just doing literary trope Olympics here. That AP English lit is just coming out of me, and it is prompting me to do my worst.
Professor Greenhouse
over here. Well, let's actually get to the horror elements too, right? So, vampirism, the fictional evil, and the clan, an actual evil. What about this is appealing or unique to the film, and how does it work?
I feel like I see now it feels like I'm about to put on my literary
Do it.
I feel like people don't analyze like the vampirism enough. Like the way it was depicted, the way it was shown was like it literally felt like an alternative, right? Like I feel like everyone saw that, where like it was like, oh, you can stay here and be a sharecropper, or you can be a vampire and this is your way out. But also, I also feel like in a way this was also a critique on, and I don't know if this is actually Coogler's like his actual intentions, because like I don't have social media, so I don't read anything. But it really did feel like the way out was just yet another like violent system, a system that required blood to maintain itself, a system where you could technically succeed maybe if no one kills you, because vampires are immortal, but also at the same time it costs you your soul, right? It's like that's why I mentioned earlier, can solidarity really happen? Can racial solidarity even happen amongst these people when they're vampires? Because it's like, can it? I feel like kind of the fact that you're offering or forcing yourself onto these people, first of all, and damning their souls ultimately to never see the afterlife again. It's like, that's not real solidarity. I feel like, in a way, vampirism is kind of could be seen as like a metaphor for like, you know, our current like liberal Western values, our current liberal Western society. Like this system is violent, you know, requires, you know, you to be evil in order to be, you know, super successful, super into it. And the better way out is to just kind of not do that at all, right?
It's kind of like this weird panopticon of vampirism, right? Like it's not something about human life that's attractive. It's more like everyone is both hyper individualized as a vampire and also turned into a collective whole kind of against their will, right? And there's something to be said about human life being bounded by death in a positive sense, just as much as it is frightening and scary as the characters do describe. And it is heartbreaking, you know. Smoke in particular, right, has had to confront death several times in his life. One with like, you know, having to kill an abusive father, to his life of crime as a gangster, and then even coming back to the remains of his dead child and him and his wife's grief, right? And then the blues also as a method to examine one's life, defined by time, defined by death, defined by sadness, and how his, you know, ability as a character to confront death in its most severe forms also helps him win at the end of the movie in a way. But it also does speak to like this essence of what is human life, right? Compared to a vampire's life. It is one that's bounded by time and defined by it. But that's also one that makes it beautiful in the way that something short-lived can be. Versus vampirism, which is supernatural and in cheating death becomes monstrous in some sense.
I think it's also interesting how like this kind of vampire is one that you instantly turn. So like you're bidding, you're turned. Like there's no like ripping the neck too much and the person dies before you can actually turn them like some vampires are. It's just like an immediate. And
Yeah,
that
like
was
what's oh go ahead.
no, that was like that was just interesting. It really sped up a lot of timeline and allowed for a very eventful movie, especially as soon as like they left, I was like, they're all gonna get turned, right? And then like, yeah, they did.
I think that was cool. I think the shared knowledge between
Yeah.
all of the vampires is super cool.
Mhm.
It like that alone almost made it like super appealing to me. Like I caught myself thinking, if I was in that barn, would I step out? Like it's like, I mean, I don't know how old that the original Irish vampire is, but like what if he's super duper old and we get like a ton of knowledge? Like like how like there are some parts of it that's like it's almost worth it, even if you are like grappling with selling, literally giving away your soul, right?
Mhm.
Let's talk about Remick the Irish Vampire, and this is another thing that like just was in the back of the head, was like, is this anti-Irish propaganda? What's going on here? But then what I really think he represents is this more so anti-wasp idea, and here's what I mean by that. Him being this super ancient vampire, he might be Celtic or Gaelic in his origins, and based on his backstory, we can tell that like he has these visceral memories of being oppressed by the English. And that kind of factors into his like vampiric pitch for diversity, equity, and inclusion. He might turn you into a vampire, but he draws the line at racism. I gotta respect that.
I do respect that.
I do respect that. I gotta
He,
respect
like,
that.
bro, I
But even
never
like
be racist, bro.
but like using gold, right? Like gold coins that are like not probably never going to be used in America again, right? They don't show us the coins, but I always just imagined it as like a Roman coin with SPQR on it for whatever reason, to really like highlight how ancient it is. But I think like him being this Gaelic vampire, right? It centers this idea of him as being far more ancient, far older, and far more immune to the hypocrisy of these founding ideals and assumptions of American society. And it is funny for him as this, Irish person who's also been like Irish people have been persecuted by the Klan to some extent, right? Having him be the first person to take this Klan couple out is an interesting idea. Having him like do this like the Irish dance circle in the middle of the movie with all the vampires was there's something transcendental to the quality of him being Irish. It's not just him being anti-Irish. It's more of like these supernatural beings that the film is pointing to with its interest in vampirism, with hoodoo, with these ideas of spirits that transcend time. Building out something that's more ancient than America and its present evils is also compelling.
So here's a question for you. We saw the Klans couple.
Yeah.
Right? We saw them with when the Irish vampire goes and he's knocking on the door and he's burning and he's hurting and everything. So we can readily assume that this couple was racist. I don't think that's a stretch. I don't think
they were in the Klan. Yeah.
Of course. My question is, what made them not racist vampires? And like, I have ideas, but I want to hear you guys' opinion on that. Like, why is it that they became
Gundam new type theory? New type theory applies to vampirism in this world. So, in seeing each other's memories, they were able to bridge the contradictions of their own. And I think the sheer oppression that this vampire must have faced in his own life,
that was enough to just set him straight.
I believe so. But also, here's another thing to think about, right? Is that the vampires were lying to get in. If the lying didn't work, intimidation worked. If intimidation didn't work, they would try to like do these backhanded debates. So there is also this idea too of like, can you really believe anything the vampires say?
I mean, I genuinely don't think the vampires were racist, right? Like, again, I keep pointing back to this scene because it is, I think, one of the like most impactful scenes. It's when, the vampire is essentially baptizing Sammy in the water, and he's talking about, he's hitting the prayer. He's saying that that the oppression that he faced was horrible. He also, when he was like, kind of being a demon to the people in the barn, he was essentially saying that this was like a solid way out of that marginalization. So I do think he is that vampire that's like, I draw the line at racism. I guess I was just more curious as to what you guys thought, like maybe the motivations for the members who we would consider much more racist to not be. I feel like the shared knowledge, I don't know. I feel like the shared knowledge might not be enough for like how much memories do you think he had to convince someone who was born and raised in the South in the Klan to not be racist? I don't know.
Probably enough.
You think so?
Probably enough, yeah.
I think they just didn't care because they were vampires. And they were just trying to... And I think they were also thinking like him. So they're like, he's like, okay, I'm not going to be a part of the Klan. The Klan is stupid. But he's also trying to say whatever he needs to say.
Yeah, what's scarier about him is his ulterior motive than his worldly motive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, fair. He just wanted to give him some freedom, guys. What's the problem?
Well, and I think that's the thing, right? Where it speaks back to that film, that scene between Smoke and Sammy, and this speaks to another thing that Sky was telling me after we came out the movie, or when we were whispering when we were watching it. But all the scenes where the twins are lecturing Sammy, Sky made this joke. It's like, my brother has given me harder versions of this lecture periodically. So like, Sammy's trying to like tell, Smoke is trying to tell Sammy like, listen, like, if you get out of this, you need to get out by legitimate means. You can't do what I did, which is use crime as a way to like quickly like climb the social ladder and hope for the best when I return. He says, go legit, go to like a town founded by freed slaves, climb the ladder that way and climb up the ranks to become a musician legitimately. That also speaks to like the same mythos the film is trying to build, which is you can't use vampirism as a cheat to fix society. It's almost like you're trying to retreat into something that's not perfect. Even if you consider the bargain that you enter vampirism and you these worldly distinctions like race, caste, and creed, it doesn't change the reality that human society is still plagued by inequality. You've cheated in some sense that way.
That's really interesting. I didn't even like think about it that way. I didn't think about the fact that Preacher Boy, essentially cheating, quote unquote, or running away to be a musician and or follow them around. That could have been a direct metaphor to vampirism. It kind of makes the end credit scene hit even harder, right? Because you get to see Preacher Boy when he's grown up. You get to see the effects of his work. Meanwhile, you get to see the surviving vampires as well, and you can see them all meet up. So I didn't even that didn't even click in my head. That's a really good.
Well, and I mean to maybe talk about that scene too, right? You have an older Sammy played by blues legend Buddy Guy, and a ageless I forget what Haley Stanfield's character and his name was, and
Mary.
Mary and Stack show up, and they basically both concur that like up until that day, up until that night, that was the best day I'd had, and even when I became a vampire, I didn't realize how much I would lose. I can't travel during the day. I can't see all this stuff, and more than that is like I can't enjoy the things of my time. Which is why he goes and seeks out Sammy at this jazz show to go relive that day, as it were.
Yeah, he said that was the last day he's ever seen the sun, man.
Yeah,
that really got me feeling so bad for these guys. But I at the end of the day, they were trying to find a way out, and they just accidentally it was poison, right?
And that was the only way they could be together. You know what I'm saying? Stack and Mary could only be together by becoming vampires, which kind of reinforces that tragic mulatto literary trope, but also like it speaks to like the kind of romantic arc they were building up between like Smoke and Stack and their estranged partners, which is that circumstances force their hands.
Yeah, also like the idea that they're the only way they were going to be together if they stayed together forever as vampires. That also makes the death of dude, I need to pull up a list of their names, or I'm so bad at this. Of the witch,
Annie.
Yeah,
Annie.
that makes the death of Annie hit so much harder because I remember I was talking to Althea when we were watching this, and she was like, "Yeah, Annie got super like crazy upset." It's like, yeah, because they all wanted to stay together. They all want like I feel like part of the tragedy of the vampire is the fact that even when they were being horrifying and scary, and just downright malicious, it's like they still had like this pure this weirdly pure motive at the end of the day,
Which is I think the thing, right, is like they describe their intentions as like friendship and fellowship, and then using sex and sexuality as like as a plot turning point to initiate characters, right? There is this human need for friendship, intimacy, closeness that lies at the heart of the film, and you compare and contrast that to segregation, alienation, and these harsh realities of American life. And
I don't blame any of them for it's like I don't blame any of them for choosing.
But that's the irony, right? Is that music is the one thing that unites all these characters in the film, and it's like it drives the plot, it drives the conflict. And
oh man, speaking of music, man, we have to talk about that scene. We have to
talk about it, and like because I was watching it, and then just like Frantz Fanon is screaming at me in my head, and we'll get into like some passages from Wretched of the Earth that really speak to it. But music is a transcendental in how the film chooses to comment on it. So it not only surpasses ethnic lines, which are societally enforced in various ways as the various characters discuss. It blurs the line between past and present, quite literally, and life and death, also literally. So we're obviously talking about the actual party itself, the actual blues performance that burns the house down, literally and figuratively. Um, it was I don't know if they shot it in one take, but it was certainly presented in one take, and it's brilliant. It's a cinematic tour. It's a cinematic tour de force where you have presence of past and present, coming in as Sammy is playing the blues in this legendary, powerful voice, and you have actors doing traditional tribal dances. You have the characters in the present getting lit. You have modern forms of dance and expression also coming out. Even the Asian characters have their traditional dances displayed. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on left and right in this real ecstatic moment of the film. And then it ends in like what we see as a vision of the place burning down, which is a vision of the future to come. But it's one of the most beautifully shot scenes in the film, probably worth the price of admission, period. It is an excellent performance by all actors involved, all artists involved, but also it's probably the central thesis of the film, which is that this music is powerful, but it also attracts unwanted eyes as is part of the horror setup. It also is a commentary on blues as a genre, as one of the characters say, quote, everybody loves the blues, nobody wants to hear the people that make it. So I don't know if it's a commentary on America's obsession with black cultural production without paying proper tribute. Is it the kind of get out thesis of vampirism as a form of surface level tolerant white society that wants to incorporate black people into it for whatever reason that may be less than stellar? Who's to say? But it's very, very powerful stuff. What did you guys think?
I think that it was definitely. I think that it was like it was definitely a tale of appropriation, right? Like there had to be a reason as to why these vampires just wanted to antagonize and like brutalize these people, right? And I think that seeing the magic of Sammy, right? Seeing like having a hands-on experience, seeing the music bring everything to life. It was awesome. It just genuinely was awesome. I remember watching it and like for a moment, especially in the beginning, when you get to see like people in our present like dancing around, I'm like, I literally just said like I said out loud like, what the fuck is happening? Like I had no idea. I was like, what are we watching? What movie is this? I don't know.
It was so visually stunning, but also just exciting. Like you didn't know what was gonna happen next in that scene.
Exactly. I like those are one of those scenes where like you could technically remove that scene and the plot wouldn't change, but the impact would change. Like you could like seeing that happen, you understand, okay, this is why the vampires want Sammy. He wants to play his little Irish jig outside and see his past people come. Like it made everything much more convincing.
And it's like people were like, what was that scene trying to say? Music is supernatural, music is transcendental, the blues is supernatural.
Very supernatural.
Go ahead.
It's it really is a beautiful scene, but yeah, it's 100%. He wants to exploit them. Like he only cares about seeing his ancestors. He doesn't care about what happens. Can that even happen since he's a vampire? Like even with music, like he didn't even think about all of the logistics. He was just going to turn Sammy and see if it happens. But what if Sammy only has that connection with him because he isn't a vampire yet?
That's a good point. It's like, what if Sammy loses his soul, he can no longer do his magic, right?
Like,
exactly.
So
that kind of speaks to how black people are clearly exploited, culture is appropriated, and we're often just the victims who have to sit in the mess, pick up the pieces, right?
Mm-hmm.
John, I know you had a hard stop. Are we able to or
I still have that hard stop at 7:30.
Okay, I'll let you use the remainder of your time. I don't know why I went to Robert's rules there.
What's the next?
I mean, the next one ideas I had was maybe to go over Frantz Fanon's links to the film, but I'll probably ask a question and maybe me and Sky can finish up that part when you gotta go. So, has Sinners broken the curse of Get Out? Attempts were made to. Go ahead.
No, I saw this and I was very curious. So, what is the Get Out formula? That's my big question. Because I feel like even when Get Out came out, it was still very. I wouldn't describe Get Out as a formulaic movie, right?
I wouldn't either, but I think there were a lot of films that came after it, and we talked about this a long time ago on our Nope episode, where there was it's easy to forget about it given the time, but there was a crop of like imitation Get Outs. If you recall, like,
Yeah, there were a lot of movies that tried to do it after, and it wasn't good.
Which almost speaks to like the formulaic with the studio system we've been bringing out, where I think the incursion into black horror stories was kind of pushed into copy what Get Out did instead of let's explore more of what this genre has to offer uniquely. So I think, like, again, Jordan Peele was kind of advancing it in his own right, and it kind of built his own voice as a director, and has, although I am side-eyeing him for his views on the conflict in Palestine. However,
Understandable.
Sinners, I think, has done a lot to advance the genre, and I think it has offered some fresh ideas and kind of captured the quote-unquote magic of Get Out, in that it is telling a very black story with a proud black voice, but it is also technically proficient in exercising storytelling in the horror genre. It can walk and chew gum, right? Yeah. So I think in that sense it has broken the Get Out curse.
See, I do agree. I think that because you have to think about it, right? Get Out and Sinners has a lot of very similar motifs, right? Like, no, there's no vampires in Get Out, but it's still very, the theme of appropriation is very obviously throughout the movie, right? I think one of the big differences, though, one of the strongest differences is just the fact that when you're in Sinners, they dangled kind of like the bait of liberation, which was really, really interesting and almost sinister in a way, right? Where they dangle they dangle like you could be you could be free if you just let me in, and like I think Get Out was a lot more just pure despair, right? Where there was no you don't get to control your body, you don't get anything, you just get to sit back and experience the worst horror, right? Being white.
Yeah, and Get Out's almost a little too real with its like, again, of course, like the idea of like people consciousnesses was a little more body horror in the sense of like people swapping minds, but vampirism as like this kind of deal with the devil serves another horror story end, and I think that's another angle explored in Frantz Fanon's book about the links between the supernatural and the plight of the oppressed, in the sense of how superstition plays a powerful role. It's something we'll get into later in the show, but before you gotta go, do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to share?
Yes, I do have some. I just want to vomit some other thoughts out I have. I think it was crazy when that Irish Jew was speaking Chinese. That was horrifying. Like that was like, I think that was got to be top 3 scariest parts in the movie, right? Like, you
honestly,
the horror she saw. I sympathize, but I also, what's her name? Grace? Is her name Grace? Am I hallucinating that? Yeah, the character, the Asian mom. I sympathize with her, but I blame her for like 90% of the deaths. Like what? Like I get it, but like, come on, man, come on. Like, don't tell them to come in. Like that's crazy. Um, any other thoughts I need to throw out there? I really
It's
like the
good to
music,
see the clan
obviously.
dying.
Yes, yes. Oh my god, I love that scene at the end, man. That was such a good scene. You see him pull out the Tommy in the bar, and you just see him light the dude. Amazing scene. I also love the at the very end when he gets to see his kid and his wife is
Mhm.
there, and she's like, "Put out the cigarette 'cause I don't want the smoke on him." Kind of like that that kind of lets you know that that's why he took off the hoodoo, like the magic bag that he had. Because he's like, I don't want to be protected anymore. I'm trying to see my kids. I love that. That was a really cool detail. And I think the last thing I just want to throw out there is, I think it's really really cool that he kept the magic that his wife gave him. I think that's really awesome. I do think that's what I mean. That's obviously why he didn't get turned, right? The hoodoo stopped the hoodoo stopped him from getting bit, which was really cool. Nice detail. But um I don't know. I there's so much I could talk about. I love the scene where he's like, I haven't seen any ghosts or monsters or demons, but I've seen power and money is how to get it.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
fucking awesome. Because the reason why he didn't see those things is because of the bag. I don't know. There's so much you could talk about. I do love this movie though. 10 out of 10.
Oh, man, we will definitely explore some of those last thoughts in our extended discussion. Take care.
All right, man. See ya. Thanks for having me.
I
Bye. Okay, so to continue too, that last scene that John was talking about, put out that cigarette. I don't want any smoke to get on our baby. She's the only one who calls the twins by notice, like Elijah and Elias. And I think she calls him by his real name, so that's the first time we realize his name is not Smoke. And I think there is something that's like in death he becomes himself again, which is redemptive in another sense.
Yeah. And like I saw something on Twitter and it was talking about how like it could be her saying put out that cigarette, but like also because his name Smoke, like put out
Yeah,
that like shed that who you used to be, just come to me. We'll be together in the afterlife.
yeah.
It was so sad and so huge and so it made me die inside. I also appreciate how he did respect her wishes and um killed her because
But that was so heartbreaking. I was actually crying when I saw that. Oh my
it
god.
was so sad. But like
It was so
also like
heartbreaking.
yeah, respect my wishes. I said kill me. I said I don't want to live like this. Don't make me live like this because you're selfish.
Absolutely just powerful stuff. So I don't know if, because based on everything I've read, I don't think they meant to make these comparisons. Obviously, this could just be me going just hyper nerd mode and projecting the last thing I read onto the last thing I watched. Um, but this is probably my pitch for everyone, especially if you're trying to make sense of the present moment while also trying to make sense of the past, and you are trying to understand how do I say this? The condition of oppression and why violence manifests, where it comes from, and what its origins are. Frantz Fanon's Wretched of the Earth is a very eye-opening read. It is both a product of its time that's a necessary artifact and highly relevant to us in the present. So for those in our audience who are not familiar with Fanon's work, it's okay. We were all introduced to something new once upon a time. Fanon was a French West Indian psychiatrist, political philosopher, and Marxist from Martinique. His works have become influential in the fields of post-colonial studies, Marxism, As well as being an intellectual, he was also a political radical, Pan-Africanist, and Marxist humanist concerned with psychopathology of colonization and the human, social, and cultural consequences of decolonization. In the course of his work as a physician and psychiatrist, Fanon supported the Algerian War of Independence, and was described as the most influential anti-colonial thinker of his time. And his experiences shape a lot of the book. And it was shortly released, I think, either before or after his death. I'm not sure. But for more than 5 decades, the life and works of Fanon have inspired national liberation movements and other freedom and political movements in Palestine, Sri Lanka, South Africa, and the United States. So let's get into the main passage that was just screaming at me when I was watching this, and it ties to 2 pivotal moments in the film. So the entire section I'm citing here is titled Concerning Violence. The first, let's see, that I'm going to get to is the final scene with Smoke killing the Klan. It affirms this idea that the Klan is a far less frightening and easier force to defeat compared to the supernatural, especially after surviving that ordeal and the psychological role of superstition among suppressed people. So if I can get to that. So citing the passage, all these patterns of conduct are those of the death reflex when faced with danger, a suicidal behavior which proves to the settler, whose existence and domination is by them all the more justified, that these men are not reasonable human beings. In the same way that the native manages to bypass the settler, a belief in fatality removes all blame from the oppressor. The cause of misfortunes and of poverty is attributed to God. He is fate. In this way, the individual accepts the disintegration ordained by God, bows down before the settler and his lot, and by a kind of interior restabilization acquires a stony calm. See. Meanwhile, however, life goes on, and the native will strengthen the inhibitions which contain his aggressiveness by drawing on the terrifying myths which are so frequently found in underdeveloped communities. There are maleficent spirits which intervene every time a step is taken in the wrong direction. Leopard men, serpent men, 6-legged dogs, zombies, a whole series of tiny animals or giants, which create around the native a world of prohibitions, of barriers, and of inhibitions, far more terrifying than the world of the settler. This magical superstructure which permeates native society fulfills certain well-defined functions in the dynamism of the libido. One of the characteristics of underdeveloped societies is, in fact, that the libido is first and foremost the concern of a group or of the family, the feature of communities whereby a man who dreams that he has sexual relations with a woman other than his own must confess it in public and pay a fine in kind or in working days to the injured husband or families is fully described by ethnologists. We may note in passing that this proves that the so-called prehistoric societies attach great importance to the unconscious. The atmosphere of myth and magic frightens me and so takes on undoubted reality. By terrifying me, it integrates me in the traditions and the history of my district or my tribe, and at the same time it reassures me, it gives me a status as if it were an identification paper. In underdeveloped countries, the occult sphere is a sphere belonging to the community, which is entirely under magical jurisdiction. By entangling myself in this intricate network, where actions are repeated with crystalline inevitability, I find the everlasting world which belongs to me, and the perenniality which is thereby affirmed of the world belonging to us. Believe me, the zombies are more terrifying than the settlers, and in consequence, the problem is no longer that of keeping oneself right with the colonial world and its barbed wire entanglements, but of considering 3 times before urinating, spitting, or going out into the night. The supernatural magical powers reveal themselves as essentially personal. The settler powers are infinitely stricken, stamped with their alien origin. We no longer really need to fight against them, since what counts is the frightening enemy created by myths. We perceive that all is settled by a permanent confrontation on the phantasmic plane. It has always happened in the struggle for freedom that such a people, formerly lost in an imaginary maze, a prey to unspeakable terrors, yet happy to lose themselves in a dreamlike torment, such a people becomes unhinged, reorganizes itself, and in blood and tears gives birth to a very real and immediate action. Feeding the mujahideens, posting sentinels, coming to the lack of families which lack the bare necessities, or taking the place of a husband who has been killed or imprisoned. Such are the concrete tasks to which the people is called during the struggle for freedom. That's a lot to throw at you, I understand, but that really like was just speaking to me the entire time, because the end of the film is like almost apocalyptic up until that point, and even you can argue is apocalyptic after that point. But all the parties at this point and lost. I mean, quite literally, they're disappeared when they wake up as vampires to the sunset or to the sunrise. So it kind of creates this idea to me that based on the information Smoke gets from Stack after he's turned, and all the themes that we described there above, that the clan is considerably less frightening to deal with than these vampires. They've already survived with the worst. Might as well get the other evil dealt with out of the way.
I mean, that, and also like he's just lost his wife.
Right.
And his baby is like not alive, and his brother is a vampire, but he doesn't want to become a vampire. It's like, what is he going to really do? Like, what is his true next steps?
Other than to go out in a blaze of glory.
Yeah. Because, like, I was thinking, I was like, well, technically he could have just left. And it's like, would you just leave?
I don't think one could, exactly.
Continue on life as normal?
Definitely couldn't at that point. And I think that's it. Just speaks to it at both ends, where it's like the conflict is no longer something to fear, it's also inevitable in that sense. And he goes out like I said earlier, like he does win at the end of the day, even if it does appear to be a Pyrrhic victory. So the other one, which is the pièce de résistance of this film, so Sam's performance at the party and the summoning of not only the vampires but of cultures past and present. So this is again a very powerful section from Fanon's book, and this passage immediately follows the last. So in the colonial world, the emotional sensitivity of the native is kept on the surface of his skin, like an open sore which flinches from the caustic agent, and the psyche shrinks back, obliterates itself, and finds outlet in muscular demonstrations which have caused certain very wise men to say that the native is a hysterical type. This sensitive emotionalism, watched by invisible keepers, who are however in unbroken contact with the core of the personality, will find its fulfillment through eroticism in the driving forces behind the crisis's dissolution. On another level, we see the native's emotional sensibility exhausting itself in dances which are more or less ecstatic. This is why any study of the colonial world should take into consideration the phenomena of the dance and of possession. The native's relaxation takes precisely the form of a muscular orgy in which the most acute aggressivity and the most impelling violence are canalized, transformed, and conjured away. The circle of the dance is a permissive circle. It protects and permits. At certain times on certain days, men and women come together at a given place, and there, under the solemn eye of the tribe, fling themselves into a seemingly unorganized pantomime, which is in reality extremely systematic, in which by various means, shakes of the head, bending of the spinal column, throwing of the whole body backward, may be deciphered as in an open book the huge effort of a community to exercise itself, to liberate itself, to explain itself. There are no limits inside the circle. The hillock up which you have toiled as if to be nearer to the moon, the river bank down which you slip as if to show the connection between the dance and ablutions, cleansing and purification, these are sacred places. There are no limits, for in reality, your purpose in coming together is to allow the accumulated libido, the hampered aggressivity, to dissolve as in a volcanic eruption. Symbolic killings, fantastic rides, imaginary mass murders, all must be brought out. The evil humors are undammed and flow away with a din as of molten lava. One step further and you are completely possessed. In fact, these are actually organized seances of possession and exorcism. They include vampirism, possession by jinns, by zombies, and by Legba, the famous god of the voodoo. This disintegrating of the personality, this splitting and dissolution, all this fulfills a primordial function in the organism of the colonial world. When they set out, the men and women were impatient, stamping their feet in a state of nervous excitement. When they return, peace has been restored to the village. It is once more calm and unmoved. During the struggle for freedom, a marked alienation from these practices is observed. The native's back is to the wall, the knife is at his throat. He will have no more call for his fancies. After centuries of unreality, after having wallowed in the most outlandish phantoms, at long last the native, gun in hand, stands face to face with the only forces which contend for his life. The forces of colonialism and the youth of a colonized country, growing up in an atmosphere of shot and fire, may well make a mock of and does not hesitate to pour scorn upon the zombies of his ancestors, the horses with two heads, the dead who rise again, and the jinns who rush into your body when you yawn. The native discovers reality and transforms it into the pattern of his customs, into the practice of violence, and into his plan for freedom.
Everybody should be in the club.
The club is part of liberatory praxis, it would seem.
Honestly, yeah.
I mean,
not necessarily the club, but like this is why it is important to dance and like enjoy like yourself and do art and like things like this. It's needed, especially in times like these, because we are
in times like these,
the bad times.
But in times like those as well, right? Like if you really look at the subtext of the film, the whole reason they wanted to start a juke joint, the whole reason the whole community shows up to this party, is because they are escaping the brutal conditions in which they find themselves. There's even an argument between Smoke and Stack about whether or not they should take the tokens that are like funny money from the plantation, because that's all they get paid in, right? And there's even like, you know, this examination of the role of juke joints in the past. Sometimes they were ran by the bosses so they could keep an eye on and control the tokens that sharecroppers got.
Right.
But at the same time, like again, this idea that Fanon is explaining, that like it may look chaotic, but it is actually quite organized. In some way, I can't help but, you know, read this passage on top of my remembrance of that scene. And this idea that it is a community desperately trying to explain itself. If you look at like this imposition of dancers and dances from past and present in that scene, what is trying to understand your past? What is trying to predict your future but an attempt to explain yourself?
Mm-hmm. And hopefully have people understand what you're saying.
Exactly. And I think again, this film level can be dismissed or understood as a very simple vampire horror story that centers black actors and black voices. But what it does with the short time it has, what it says, accomplishes, is so monumental. It's just a joy to see something like this when times are so bleak, and at least, you know, just maybe go away from that and just talk about film. When film has been such slim pickings, this has been, to suffice it to say, a treat.
Yes, and a world of Amelia Perez's. Don't be Amelia Perez. One of the worst movies I've never watched. And I don't need to watch it to make a criticism about it. I know enough.
But I think it's again, it's like, there is this idea of like, should film say anything? And I don't film has to always be clear. It doesn't always have to. It doesn't have to do the thing I'm particularly interested in, which is to have a societal critique or a pointed cosmology or ideology that matches with mine. But internally consistent, it should have thematic elements that are expressed clearly. And for something to have a clear thematic framework for itself, something to be new for once, it's like a breath of fresh air. Like, we're not just trying to glaze this movie. Like, it's doing a lot with what it has, even to explore this forgotten genre relegated to being this old man's genre, to center the stories of people in the Delta South, and not to go straight into poverty porn with it, but to kind of how complicated people's lives were back then, and to put it into the context of a very entertaining horror flick. Very needed.
Yeah. The idea of like, obviously the twins left Chicago because they was stealing. But like, not everyone stayed up north when they migrated, especially in the first leg of the Great Migration, because there was so much racism still, and like, it was very racist. It was just a different type of racism. So a lot of people moved back because they could not deal with the type of racism of like big city racism, northern big city racism. So that is a realistic thing. Sometimes a lot of people did move back. Um, the fact that the Klan was like the fucking Grand Dragon was like, there's no Klan here. And when I was watching that at the beginning, I was like, there's Klan. Ha ha ha. He's probably in the Klan. But then, of course, he's a fucking head of the Klan. And to do this thing and to like this scam that they were running where they pretended for a little bit that they liked black folks just so they could rob them and then kill them later. Like, imagine like getting robbed right before you're murdered brutally in a hate crime.
There's something so interesting about that from a perspective, right? Of like using a more grounded, more mature understanding of history to make compelling characters. There's just something very technically brilliant about that. But then even in our times today, right, where you look at how ahistorical this contemporary American psychosis is, right? It is completely devoid of history. It views anyone that's it sees as new or external as easy to write off, with no understanding of how they came to get here, or even how many waves of migration are involved in America's history, right? This is a film that boldly is willing to examine that human beings have migrated several times across history, and that cultural exchange is an inevitability. In fact, it is something that we should celebrate. But also that people flee violence. People flee very real things. People have really real fears. Their superstitions are often grounded by those fears. So to kind of take that on its head and work that into a traditional horror narrative works technically from that perspective, but it speaks to our reality. if we can't even examine our past for how horrible the real events were, what's to be said about depictions of fiction historical events? And I'm not to, sorry, let me rephrase that. What does it say that this film that we're speaking about is both an echo of things that are real, but is fantastical? That is not a true story, right?
Mhm.
Is it to say that, you know, there is a psychosis that we experience in the present that has to be worked out through some kind of magical thinking? Is it that there is this mystical supernatural quality to the Delta South that is part of its history and culture, that, you know, even if it is superstitious and you know, not something that we might deem as real, is this sublimation of very real horrors and pains that people from this region experience? I think it's something that people who watch this movie, not just for it being technically enjoyable and being something fun to watch, it also does look at a very real period of history.
Mhm.
And I think just looking back and examining these ghosts, literal and otherwise, is very powerful stuff. I don't know. That's probably all I got to say at this point.
It was shot amazing. It was just really great.
So final rating, I think. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say it was good.
It was great. I think, I don't know if we do a 5 out of 5 or out of 10 rating. I know John gave it a 10. I'm definitely giving it a 9 for sure. Lowest score possible, 9.
I think I'm gonna give it a 9.75.
9.75. Very highly rated. Very highly rated film from all of us here at the Greenhouse. If you haven't seen it, go see it. And I hope your theater doesn't screw you over on IMAX. That's all I can say.
Very disappointing. Need to watch the final scene. I can probably find it online, but it's nothing like watching something in the theaters.
Definitely. And I think for what it's worth, if you don't see it in IMAX, I'm sure it still holds up.
I 100% agree.
But it definitely deserves 100% of the hype it's gotten. It deserves 100% of the praise it's gotten. So all I can say is, you know, movies are not dead. They are being killed. Somehow they still peek out at us. And I mean, even then, like, I know I've blathered on long enough. We should probably start wrapping this up. But like, just the fact that that people can, like, you know, speak to those scenes and it gets their, you know, creative juices flowing all these ways. Even this, just the ability of this film to be like, no, what if, you know, there is a tie to Wretched of the Earth here? Just the fact that this film is sparking so much renewed creative interest in people is in how bleak our times are. It is, you know, it's amazing. It's amazing. Any other closing thoughts?
Um, they ate.
AA?
They ate.
They ate. They did eat. So yeah, go watch Sinners. Go read Wretched of the Earth. You'll have fun with both. All right. So with all that being said, we are working on getting back up to a consistent release schedule. We're just happy to get this one out. Please stay tuned. We're not giving up anytime soon, but releases are subject to conditions. Let's just put it that way. So with that being said, Thanks for tuning in, dear listeners. We'll see you on the next one. Take care.